All right, so we are here taking a look at Cosmic Reclaimer, and I am joined by BeardedCynic, aka Steve. How are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. Thank you.
All right, so we've got the game running here, and would you recommend playing with a controller or just mouse and keyboard?
We did build it so you could play with a controller, so whatever you're most comfortable with. The bindings aren't properly labeled, of course, in Engine. We didn't have
Okay,
time to make context-specific, you know, bindings in the tips, but it should all work as far as I'm aware.
yeah, seems to be. And once I just figure out what the okay, so you press A to vault, and then press or north to climb up, and seems like it's working. Can you fall out of bounds? No, okay, these are actually walls.
There are some clipping issues here and there on the level, which was cobbled together in pretty much no time. So you can, and the animations weren't properly retargeted either before we wrap things up. So you definitely can clip through some things you're not supposed to clip through in the level. But
Right. Well, sometimes that's all part of the fun.
yeah, there
Uh,
there are definitely some of those accidents in here where we didn't have time to fix things, and Unity physics also you can do some fun things as a result of that, but it shouldn't completely break the game.
so can you talk a little bit about your role on the project and your background in game development?
Sure. I spent about 10 years in the games industry working as a technical designer and a UX researcher. I work in civic tech now, so I work on federal government projects for the most part. Um, but I switched over about 2 years ago. Um, and this is the first project that I've done with actually one of my coworkers from civic tech. We wanted to do a jam because we wanted to keep up practice. We both work on projects on our own on the side, and we decided just to enter the jam, get our skills back up to par. And this is the first time that I've used Unity in probably uh, at least 2 or 3 years, and I sort of swore them off, for reasons about a year and a half ago, or I guess it's been a little bit over a year now. We all know what that was about.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
she always uses Unity, and she actually uses a toolkit called Game Creator. I think it is Game Creator 2. And so she really wanted to use this for the jam, so I came back to Unity instead of using Unreal or Godot this time around. And yeah, we just threw something together real quick to see what we could do over the course of a few days. We had 4 folks originally that were going to join the team, but and we did all of our like brainstorming and workshops and everything. I did an ideation workshop and everything prior to the jam starting, but half the team ended up leaving, so yeah, it was only the two of us for the jam. So we lost one of our programmers and our 3D artists and environment artists. So that was kind of
So
a
what do we
blow
actually?
there.
Yeah. So the assets that we're seeing in the game now, um, are these like just pre-made assets or?
They are assets that were either made previously or we just had the license to. You didn't quite. It came around the other side of the box there, and this is something that I'm not very happy about either. Is you have to retry from the start. I didn't have time to put checkpoints in it, so unfortunately,
Okay.
you have to start all the way over. That's a bad look for a puzzle game and in a game jam especially. So yeah, I really hate that I didn't have time to do that, along with quite a few other things that are missing here. But yeah, all of these assets were either made prior to the jam, or we just had licenses for them, and they
Mhm.
just happened to fit this well together. So without the 3D modeler, in the group this time,
Yeah.
we weren't able to come up with a whole lot original for the jam. So
Only so much you can do there. I mean, um, So yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about the inspiration behind this game?
Yeah, so we started out, and through our ideation, we came up with sort of like we were talking about with one of the previous games earlier today. We came up with a few different ideas of things, just general ideas of genres and potential games we might want to make for the jam, and we tested a few of them out, and we eventually landed on this sort of top-down puzzle game with inspirations being Sokoban and Lolo and even Catherine. I was hoping to get some of that in there as well, but we never got around to that because Catherine is sort of a vertical version of Sokoban, more or less. So we kind of wanted to integrate all of those things: the verticality, the traditional Sokoban mechanics, and bring it up to modern standards, more or less. And Lolo has some just really cool stuff as an old NES puzzle game that just hasn't been. It itself was inspired by Sokoban, but a lot of the things that it did haven't been touched for a while. So felt like that would be a good one to pull some influence from. But we didn't actually get many of those unique mechanics implemented in this case. In particular, the one where you freeze enemies and you're able to push them around as if they were boxes themselves once they're frozen. We were really interested in getting that one in, but it didn't make the cut.
So just to make sure I don't get shot by the robot, I got to make sure that this box is like really centered on the track here, right?
Yeah, as long as the laser's not zooming past it, you should be fine, because what'll happen is it'll if it actually goes past the hitbox on the laser will clip you sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah. And it does have splash damage too, so you could just leave it there in front of him is probably the safer way.
Oh.
But yeah, because when you're pulling it, the splash damage sometimes will get you too. But if it's catching both of the colliders on the lasers, and yeah, just letting it chill there is usually good enough. And this is an interesting thing. I've never seen anyone keep pushing the box after they leave the ledge. So you're the first person to find this bug. And that's actually a case where you'll need to resize that box to large before it'll hit the conditional to trigger that platform. So that little blue zone over there that we never had time to actually make it look like anything. It's just it's just a transparent cube.
Okay. Let's see. That looks like it's blocking it now. So let's just go. All right. So then, yeah, can you talk a little bit about the actual development process? How did that go?
Everything went pretty smoothly for the most part. We worked a lot on it. We spent a good bit of time, and there were definitely issues. I would say building some of the mechanics, like the scaling mechanic, was a little bit complicated, particularly because of Unity physics. Unity rigid bodies don't like to play nicely. They like to inherit velocity from anything that's within 100 yards of them. So I'm surprised you haven't ran into that issue yet. But yeah, it took a little while to get it reasonably playable for the jam, and we definitely plan to go back and polish some afterwards on just making this little tech demo more palatable than it is right now, because it's pretty rough. And something else we left out that you were just experiencing there is we never did like object transparency between the player and the camera, so you can get like a face full of just textures right now from whatever's in your way. That's something I'd really like to see change too. But yeah, scope creep is probably the biggest thing that we struggle with. But that's every jam. Every time I tell myself that I enter a jam, I'm going to keep the scope low, and we're just going to make something super polished, and that gives you a good dopamine hit, and it's going to perform well. We'll stick a leaderboard or something on it, and it just never happens. So the scope creep gets me every time. So
yeah, I mean it's difficult to avoid at the best of times. Like if you are, I guess you can end up with a bunch of ideas where it's like, oh, sure, we could do this, but it's going to be so much more interesting if we can do this. And then you don't necessarily manage to make it all the way to whatever that other like version of the game ends up being.
Mm-hmm. Oh, look out for that guy.
Okay, that's also going to kill me.
Yeah, that guy will also run over you, and you're really close to the end right now. Okay. Wouldn't want that to happen and have you restart without the checkpoints.
Yikes. Okay, so yeah, we got. I mean, it looks like lasers are actually destroyed if they're off screen. So
yeah, they are. I did not want that getting out of control in case someone happened to leave the game open for a long period of time, because after I first built it, I realized, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot to ever destroy those after a certain period of time, and I left it open once, came back and had like thousands of lasers just flying off into infinity. So yeah, they do get destroyed off screen now.
So you climb up here, and then come on. And I guess this is going to be the final thing that activates that barrier up there. Yes, there we go. Okay, and you can't. Oh, you can't just fall off. Okay.
Yep, and that's it. Just yeah, kind of just a tech demo. But we had plans for lots of stuff. I'm sure you noticed when you were interacting with the machine that scales things, you can actually make the cube smaller as well.
Yeah.
One of the plans that we had is when the cube was in the smallest state, we were going to have the companion be capable of picking that up and carrying it. So then you could combine that and have a dynamic where you're able to jump over or vault over some of the obstacles or climb over some of the obstacles with a cube in tow to solve a puzzle. So we were planning some things like that that just didn't make it.
Oh,
but yeah, you've
my speedrun tactics didn't work. Is there actually a flag set?
Yeah, there's a flag set to spawn that in after, because I was like, yeah, if I'm going to leave this box clipping mechanic in here, then I'm going to have to spawn in the actual collider that finishes the game after everything else, or we are going to have a true speed run. So.
All right, well, I'm going to look around for the dog that's out of bounds that you can pet, and maybe you can tell me a little bit about the, what would you say is the most difficult problem that you encountered during the course of the jam, and what was your solution to that?
There were a lot.
Yeah.
We, the scaling problem that we dealt with, where I was mentioning that, Unity physics just doesn't like to play nice with anything. The way that we dealt with that is we just set conditional constraints, positional constraints on the box. Yeah, and I'll give you a hint. If you'll run straight out from there, you'll find the pop as well from the starting area.
Straight out from the start, like back in the opposite direction where you spawned?
Yeah, in the opposite direction of where you spawn, you'll find the pop. But, yeah.
Hey, there we are.
It's out.
And there's cake.
Yeah. Yeah, the cake is not a lie. And yeah, she wanted a goat in here to represent her, so she has a origami goat on the table as well. But yeah, the scaling, setting the constraints on that, and setting conditionals to remove the constraints when we have certain interactions with it, that was definitely a big one. Deciding how we were going to handle the camera was something else. I've had very mixed responses about the way that the camera is set up. Um, we thought about making it free, but if we made a free camera that just rotated around at the same distance that it does now, I was really concerned that folks were going to spend a lot of the time that they were playing with the camera clipped through objects and not able to see what the heck was going on. And I wasn't sure which was going to be more frustrating, the camera moving at 90-degree intervals, or people not being able to see through objects. And so we went with this. Probably in the post-jam release, we'll put an option to toggle between the two, right, and actually have the camera set up properly, because I don't believe it's going to be very difficult to change the camera there. Yeah, other than that, level design was hard. This level is horrible. It was done in like 2 hours right before we ended, just to show off what mechanics that we had. But yeah, figuring out how we were gonna design the levels to begin with was a tough thing, especially without the full vision of all the mechanics we had planned in the game. So
just trying to see what kind of interesting interactions I could get there, and I'm kind of happy to see that if I get one box to clip inside another, then I do actually get this interaction where it they stack, because I wanted to see if I could use that to get up here faster. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to get me anything special. Oh,
yeah. That's something else we had tried to do. We wanted the boxes to stack originally, and we even have the trigger may still even be there. You may be able to stack 2 boxes on the sizing platform. Like if you pull a second one over there to it when one is setting on it, I think it'll automatically take it from you and stack it on top of it still, maybe. But we originally intended for you to be able to stack the boxes and push them around, and there were a lot of dynamics that we could have in that case, where you solve a puzzle by, scaling 2 different size boxes and then pushing them into a particular position to give you access to a different area and things like that. But we just couldn't get it working right in time. You saw there how they clipped into each other, and there's all kinds of wonky physics stuff happening. So
yeah,
and all of the...
Oh, yes.
And... there you go. That's awesome.
Alright, and then this one I could solve by just doing this. I'm trying to see, like, knowing that I need to solve at least this puzzle, I wanted to see, like, how much could you cheese it?
Quite a lot.
It seems... Sometimes that's its own kind of fun.
Yeah, I love stuff like that, which is why I didn't try and take out the whole clipping through walls mechanic to begin with. I was like, why not just leave this in here? Folks will probably have fun with it, right? So yeah, and if we would have managed to get a leaderboard or anything else on there, it would have been that much more interesting, because folks could have used this as a speedrun tactic to, get through it faster. So, but we didn't make it to the leaderboard. I always say that I'm going to do that kind of stuff that nets you more engagement in game jams, but it just never does get done, because I always get too invested in making the game and executing on the vision that we had, and I don't cut nearly enough out of it when time starts to get tight.
Have you thought about making a template project where you sort of like already have a leaderboard and a timer UI set up so that you can just kind of like snap that into place?
100%. I actually we've been using Unreal for the last couple of jams that we did, and I actually have a bunch of, I have a whole jam toolkit now built for myself in Unreal. But like I said, this is the first time that I've used Unity in quite a while, and I didn't have anything. So we were starting from complete scratch here, and so this was me trying to learn, Game Creator 2, which is weird. I don't do well with visual scripting. I'm better in an IDE. So I had to learn that and incorporate what I could with my quick scripts that I threw in there on top of it, and relearn a lot of things that have changed in Unity as well. The last time I was using Unity on a regular basis was right as the new input system was implemented, so it's been quite a while.
Yeah, that makes it makes a big difference. Like it's a bit complicated to get a handle on, but it is much nicer than the old version for sure.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I still haven't completely wrapped my head around it yet, or otherwise it would have been executed better here. But it does seem better. It is more complicated.
Yeah. All right. So I guess you mentioned like you had some plans for a post-gen version. Do you want to talk a little bit more about like what those kind of changes are going to be?
Yeah, I just I want to take the feedback that we've gotten, the obvious things, like for example, the level design is just absolutely horrible. So I would like to make the level a little bit tighter, get all this empty space out of it, clean up the mechanics so we don't have all these janky interactions, and get at least the experience that we presented in the jam smoothed out enough that it's more fun to play through. And then after that, we might consider adding some of the features that we left on the table during the jam. But I at least want to leave it in a state that, this is what we should have submitted, but didn't have time to get to, right?
I'm almost wondering, like, it's fun to click through stuff, and I wonder is like, can you take any of those features and make it like an actually intentional feature? It's in here.
Yeah,
already,
most definitely. Yeah, most definitely. That was an immediate thought once we figured out we could do that. We're like, yeah, this is just a game mechanic now. Like this is just something we would use if we were building this into a full game. To set up puzzles, but we didn't incorporate it in any way other than the actual Easter egg in this, because this rough level was thrown together real quick, and by the time we realized that was a thing, it was already pretty much assembled, and I was like, well, don't really have time to make that a main feature of the game at this point. I would have to replan everything around that now that we've had this revelation.
Yeah. With that feature, you can actually get through the game pretty quickly because you only have to half solve the sort of Eastern puzzle.
Yeah, but it's a pretty cool little accident, right? It is fun to play with. So I think if you built puzzles with that in mind or levels with that in mind from the beginning, it would be really cool to use as another mechanic on top of this type of game.
Yeah, if you had the player like pushing or pulling something that was designated as a ghost block, and then you had the knowledge that a ghost block can be used to clip through anything that is exactly a single width wide. Even the like sort of other shortcut I found of like getting the boxes to stack and then ending up on top of them, like that in itself could be something interesting. Like to me, figuring out that I could do that kind of like staircase exploit was more interesting than just enlarging a block and using it to form a bridge.
Yeah, so. I definitely agree with you, and that was the intent, but Unity Physics did not want to play nicely with us, so yeah.
No, I only mentioned it so far as I'd love to see it explored further and more intentionally in a post-gen version, if you want to go in that direction.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I will try to get working. Now that is potentially a monumental task because we know what Unity physics are. So I don't know if I'll manage to pull that off, but I would like to have that working for sure, because you'll even notice that you can vault and climb all of the boxes, and that was meant to be part of that whole interaction system with stacking the boxes and sizing them all simultaneously as well, because the sizing machine will only size things in one direction, right? Mm-hmm. So if you needed to get to a certain height that required you to stack, a a medium box on top of a large box, and then cycle that once so that the one on the bottom becomes small and the one on the top becomes, just to get the perfect height. Those kind of setups and everything would have been great. But yeah, just no time to get there, and I didn't even honestly get to the point to where I was. I normally would implement IPM for my mechanics on everything, like introduce the mechanic, have the player practice, and then have like a mastery, use of the mechanic. And I didn't even get that far with the level design. I barely even. That was nice. I was barely even able to get to the point where it was properly introduced and folks could actually tell what the heck they're doing with this. So next time I'll get the scope right, and and maybe some of these ideas will come to fruition instead of just being on paper.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, it's a process, and it's something that, like, next time around, if you're more decided, like, if you're going to use Unreal, if you're going to use Unity, like, what that ends up being, it'll be easier to get that figured out ahead of time and have it be I wanted to see if I could do something funky here. I don't know how I got that huge launch off the other two. That was pretty fun.
That was just... Yeah, if you keep applying enough force around the object, the physics engine will eventually find a way. So, yeah. Yeah, toolkits, I definitely... I wish we would have had that, but this was actually Aurora's first game jam ever. She does have a game that she just... put on Steam recently that I'll plug at the end here, but she's never entered a game jam before. So, of course, we didn't have any of the tools ready to go. If she decides to do another one, I'm sure next time around we will have built, numerous tools in advance, and that makes it a lot easier to execute when it comes time.
All right. Well, if anybody has any questions from the chat, now would be the time to get those in, or if they have any comments. Just in general, I mean, it is fun, if only because I'm exploiting things. Like, it weirdly makes it its own experience in terms of, like, hunting for these glitches and seeing what you can use to, like, intentionally exploit. There's a version, there's part of my mind that almost says, like, don't even worry about polishing it, just make more levels that take full advantage of these kind of glitches and just go with it like that, but make that part of the fun. Just embrace it.
Yeah, I'm with you there on that idea as well. So some of the maybe physics glitches where you launch into the air, not so much, but stacking the boxes and clipping through things, I think those were really cool, bugs that could definitely be features. So I'm into that for sure.
Yeah, just do a sort of like Stanley Parable narrator saying, like, oops, sorry, this puzzle's impossible. Just grab that box and pull it backwards until you're mashed against the wall. And it's like, oh, you clipped through the wall. I guess you can keep going then.
Right, and if we execute on the ideas that we had, we already have the character for that. The goofy little, drone that flies around with you can be, the quirky sidekick that makes those comments. So, yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay. Well, if you do end up making a post-jam version, or if you end up participating in a jam in the future, I'd be more than happy to take a look at it. But yeah, in the meantime, you mentioned that there was a game that was up on Steam you wanted to plug?
Yeah, check out Aurora's game, Relic. I linked it in the chat there. It's a little action RPG co-op game where you hunt for relics. So, give her a follower wish list there, and she's looking to release that pretty soon. So,
hey, nice. Make sure that I bookmark your game here, so I'll add a rating to that before the jam period's over. But yeah, thank you so much, Steve, for joining me on the stream today. And I would love to see a just like fully embrace the glitches version of this, because I think that could actually lead to some really fun puzzle solving. So Yeah.
Yep. Well, we'll give it an honest try. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. All right. Bye for now.